Good to see you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Ms. Ambassador.
Thank you, Katya. It's good to be here with you today.
So, first of all, it's been a year, as I understand, as you have started your job in Moscow. How do you feel? How is it going?
Well, Katya, thank you. And let me begin just by extending my appreciation and admiration for the work that you and the team at Dojd are doing in bringing journalism of integrity and credibility to Russians and to covering Russia. It's even more necessary now than ever, something that I've seen in this first year that I've been here.
Thank
and
you so much.
Of course, we're on the 2-year anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And it's hard to think of a time when our bilateral relationship has been at a lower point. And it's also impossible to separate the state of our relations from Russia's decision to invade its neighbor, Ukraine. And as I've been here in this year in Russia as ambassador, I have been asking myself the question, how has this war made Russia safer? What has it done for the people of Russia? How many young men have been robbed of their futures? How many young men have been robbed of their health, their lives? How does that make Russia safer? Russia and Russians have been a part of my life and my career for almost 40 years. And the place that Russia is in now is sad, and it's just not necessary.
So how do you feel about your mission right now? In this, you said it's a very low point of the relationships between Russia and the United States. Right? It's almost a Cold War era, right? Or maybe a new Cold War. I don't know how you call it. But how do you see your mission in Moscow in these circumstances? And what is Washington expecting from you?
So there are some core responsibilities that I and the embassy continue to carry out. Obviously, in this situation, trying to maintain some very key channels of communication so that we avoid miscalculations and misunderstandings. The safety and security of American citizens, looking after detained American citizens. We have 2 wrongfully detained American citizens here, Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan. We have still a mission and a responsibility to try to keep a hand open to the people of Russia. I mean, this is one of the things that I think is so very important when the relationship at the government to government level is at such a low place. I mean, throughout my career and time with Russia, the value of people-to-people contacts, especially in these times, has been notable. And so we're trying to keep exchange programs going where we can, to keep people-to-people contact alive for that day when government-to-government relations have an opportunity to improve. I've seen the power of this myself. I've met with young people who've been in the United States who come back and they're proud of their own country. They're proud to be Russians, but they have appreciated the chance to see the wider world, to sometimes break through the myths. And I think this is a time when we really need that sort of contact. So these are the things that we're doing here at the embassy.
A lot of Russian citizens want to get the American visa. Does the embassy still have an opportunity to help Russian citizens with that? Is that a process? Maybe it's improving, because a couple of years ago it was almost no chance to get a visa for the Russian citizen.
So our consular operations here at the embassy in Moscow remain very limited. That is a result of the limitations that the Russian government has placed on our staffing. We certainly would like to be able to do more. we keep talking to the Russian government about our operations, and we certainly will look for opportunities to improve our ability to return some additional capacity to consular operations, including the ability to issue visas to Russian citizens. But in the meanwhile, we do have other means of Russian citizens being able to obtain visas. A number of our embassies have Russian speakers in their consular sections, and we have further information on our website to try to help people who have an opportunity, a need to travel to the United States. And we've said the United States remains open for Russians to visit.
I can imagine that it's tough, but what level of communication do you have? What can you tell us about Minister Lavrov? How do you talk to each other? It was really, really interesting.
You know, in this environment, as I've said, it's a fairly limited set of channels of communication. I think we try very hard, and I see this from our Russian colleagues as well, to keep our communications as professional and constructive as possible. Obviously, we've got some very contentious issues on the table, but we certainly from our side try to keep an open channel. So as I said, so that we avoid miscalculations and miscommunications.
But you can feel their attitude towards the United States and towards the embassy, right? How would you describe it? The attitude of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of the office of the official representative, Maria Zakharova, and others who comment on the U.S. policy on a daily basis.
Well, as I said, you can see that at a public level in statements that the very low state of our relations, the contentiousness on nearly every policy issue is reflected, and the concerns that we feel for, what I think, the bottom line is Russia's irresponsible actions and behavior on the international stage, and Ukraine being very central to that point. I mean, it makes it very tough to have conversations at a policy level.
So this is something new. You probably heard about the new old idea of the Russian government, of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to deprive foreign embassies of the right to hire technical staff. It's a Soviet style, obviously. But what do you think about that?
I've seen some of the statements that have been made just within the past few days publicly. We're studying it. We'll continue to talk to the Russian government, as I said, about our operations here and their operations in the United States. We certainly believe that it's in the interest of both of our countries to have our embassies able to function appropriately. So we'll continue to look at what they have to say on this topic.
You have mentioned Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan, the American citizens who are right now in jail in Russia. And we can see that Kremlin is using these citizens as a bargaining item, I would say. What is the stage of negotiations on the prisoner swap, if you can tell us? And, considering that Vladimir Putin, in the interview with Tucker Carlson, has mentioned that he has not said it directly, but he let us know that Evan Gershkovich may be released if Russia gets Mr. Krasikov, who is in jail in Germany. Are you ready to keep on negotiating this offer?
So what I can say is that that these cases of wrongfully detained citizens, Evan and Paul, have President Biden's attention, the attention of the U.S. government, and the attention of this embassy. I can't get into the details of discussions with the Russian government on this. What I, as I said, can assure you is that this has everyone's attention. This embassy every day is working on not just, in fact, Evan and Paul's cases, but we have a number of other detained Americans who we try to make sure receive appropriate consular support. But certainly in Paul and Evan's cases, with the wrongful, unjust detention, we want to see them return to their families. I've met with both Evan and Paul on several occasions. I've talked to their families. Paul has been imprisoned unjustly for more than 5 years. Evan for nearly a year now.
Yeah.
The toll that this takes on families is incredible. And what it really underscores is that, this use that we see by the Russian government of people and their lives, innocent people, as political pawns. Real people suffer in these situations. And so we want to bring both Evan and Paul home as quickly as possible. Seeing their circumstances, talking to their families, the unnecessary anguish that they are being put through by being treated as these political pawns. It's just very sad.
Do you have an opportunity to influence somehow, maybe, the fate of Russian citizens wrongfully imprisoned, the political prisoners, including Vladimir Karamurza, who used to live in Washington, D.C., and of course, including the leaders of Vladimir is also leader of Russian opposition, but I mean also Ilya Yashin, Alexei Navalny, and others, political prisoners in Russian Federation. I understand that they're not American citizens, but still, this is something terrible that is happening in front of our eyes right now, torturing these people in prison, including, and first of all, Alexei Navalny. Is there any opportunity to influence the situation for you?
So we have been calling ever since I think most of the people you mentioned have been detained, calling for their release, calling for the freedom for these voices of political opposition, principled political opposition. Katya, I mean, what we're seeing in Russia right now is a wave of repression that in talking to Russians here, I don't think people recall seeing this kind of repression since the darkest times of the Soviet Union. And, the question I have to ask myself is, why is the Russian government afraid of voices of opposition? There is nothing wrong or unpatriotic or treasonous about having a different opinion than the policy or action of one's government. And the Russian Constitution guarantees Russian citizens these fundamental freedoms, freedom of speech. And so, I mean, I think what we're seeing now, again, is just a situation where Russia and its citizens are being pulled back into a very dark, isolated, repressive place that is very, very concerning, and will certainly continue calling for for those who are exercising their fundamental freedoms to be released.
So if you don't mind, Ambassador Tracy, I would like to ask you about the upcoming elections in Russia. And, the results are predictable. So would you consider to congratulate Mr. Putin after he wins these elections? You personally as an ambassador, and also you as the United States of America, Washington, D.C. and White House.
Katya, I think it's impossible to separate the elections context from the environment of repression that I was just talking about. Russians deserve the right to chart their own course. And certainly what we're seeing is that their ability to chart their own course through receiving impartial information, being able to exercise their fundamental freedoms, that is extremely troubling as it makes it so much more difficult for Russians to be able to express the future that they want for themselves. And it's a tragedy for Russia. And what certainly we will continue to do, as I said, is to call on Russia to honor its responsibilities under its own constitution, to respect the fundamental freedoms of its citizens.
Well, they don't hear you calling, right? There are so many statements being made for so long, but there is no reaction. And when we talk about the civil society of Russia, including the rights of the opposition leaders, opposition politicians, including rights of journalists and human rights activists, and so on and so forth, we have watched the interview of Vladimir Putin to Tucker Carlson where he obviously considers the communication of the United States with representatives of the civil society of Russia as a meddling, right, in internal affairs of Russia. And he talks about it, saying that it was a huge mistake made by the United States, something like that. So it means that he is strictly against any kind of communication of the embassy, of the representatives of the United States with civil society. Does it give you any room for cooperation, helping, supporting people who need this support in Russia?
Katya, first of all, let me emphasize that when we call for the Russian government to respect the fundamental freedoms of its citizens, we're not also just talking to the Russian government. We're talking to Russian citizens. Mm-hmm. And I know from my own history and time here, my time in the 1980s, when we still were seeing repression of human rights activists, that these calls were also very important, so that those who were being imprisoned, who were being repressed, knew that they were not alone. And that is a very important charge that we still have and will continue to do. I said in my earlier in my remarks that we are continuing to try to maintain people-to-people ties. We have disagreements with the Russian government over some of our people-to-people contacts, but we fundamentally believe that that these are important contacts that help maintain bridges between our society. We see that Russians are interested in them. I mean, we're talking about things like English language learning, study in the United States, and opportunities to get to know the Americans better. So I'm not sure how that constitutes meddling, but in Russia, as I said, based on my own experiences of talking with people who come back after having been to the United States, or sometimes just been in a virtual environment where we're providing, as I said, things like English language learning support, that it's not changing the loyalties or patriotism of the Russians who are participating. It's an opportunity to build bridges and try to understand each other better, and to hopefully be a source of, again, stability in a time where there is a lot of instability and difficulty in our government to government relationship. So we will continue to do our best, and as long as we see that Russians are interested in these kinds of contacts, we'll try to support those contacts.
Thank you so much.
Итак, интервью записано утром в пятницу, 16 февраля. Вечером того же дня Линн Трейси в прямом эфире «Дождя» мы попросили посла прокомментировать вести о гибели Навального.
What I want to emphasize from here in Moscow is just how terrible this news is. Our hearts go out to Alexei Navalny's family, friends, and supporters. And on behalf of the people of the United States, I want to offer our most sincere condolences. I know that Alexei Navalny was a tireless and brave champion fighting corruption. And what he represented for so many Russians was the hope for political change and for the possibility that life in Russia could get better. And this is a tragedy for Russia and all Russians. We will be watching and waiting patiently as authorities bring facts to light, but be assured the world is watching.